Record.
Hi, this is Jay Rose Pepe. This is a meeting of the Lodging Tax Committee on April the 10th at 5:30 p.m. We'll go around the room. People can introduce themselves. I'm Jay Rose Pepe, City Council.
Keith Washness.
Jack Edwards, Days Inn.
Kathy Garcia, Port of Bremerton.
Brandy Rainierson, City Staff.
So we have an agenda and we'll go through it. We just introduced ourselves and did a roll call. So we were talking about the policy on mid-year fund balance reviews and reserve policy. This was leading in a conversation I had with Noah Crocker, Finance Director for the city, and we met last week just to talk about how things were going financially. LTAC dollars are for LTAC. They can't be spent anywhere else. So it's not like anybody's looking to appropriate it, but at the same time, as we're all aware, we don't have a large increase in beds either. So we're pretty much, if we don't have an increase in, what are we looking
Rates.
for? Rates, thank you. Then there's really not an increase coming in unless there's an increase in people staying. So things are moving along, same as last year, a little ahead. But because people are staying here, but they're not like tremendously ahead. We're about 2 months behind in collection. So what was interesting was the discussion came up about balance and what we wanted to do. We know that the council wanted to basically for the biennium budget allocate $100,000 each year. And we had talked about, okay, do we go, if things are running ahead, do we want to take a look at allocating any additional funds, which I would not say we do, would look at until mid-year. This is more like a policy meeting. And then Noah kind of threw out that, okay, do you guys have a strategic plan? Something more than bouncing from year to year. And I said, not that I know of. And I didn't know what you were aware of with what you did at Bremerton. So then I got the city of Bainbridge Island. I went to Bainbridge, looked online at Bremerton, Paulsbo, Gig Harbor, and really there's not much there under their LTAC committee besides basically what we've done. So the only thing that they did that was interesting, and I just printed these off to look at it, is that for the city, this was kind of how they did their, a kind of overview of what they were doing, very similar to what we do. They had a selection criteria, which might be worth, when we come into this year, trying to identify points, because everybody knows that everybody's request is much more than they have available. The other but the interesting thing was all the way in the back was the fact is that they have basically a balance to offset basically a year's balance. So basically if everything shut down and there was no lodging tax, they'd be able to have funds. So they've looked at it from that point of view of saying, very similar to what some of the city council members had, of saying, hey, guess what? We're always going to keep a year in reserve. And which is pretty much where we're at, with the $90,000 balance. So that's something to think about if we're going to put together a strategic plan. The other two things that have come up recently is to see if we wanted to have set aside some money, and this would not be for this year because nobody's looking at cutting anybody back from money that we've allocated, but to say, hey, going into next year, of saying hold some money aside for any new activities in case there's something new that came up. So for example, let's just say we had $100,000 to work with, that we would say we would hold $5,000 at, to see if there's a new group or new activity that started something. And then, and then maybe at mid-year you say, okay, nothing's come up, we can allocate that amount.
Split it up
again
whatever way.
if we wanted to. So that was food for thought. The other thing is to think about what some people call a big, hairy, audacious goal. For example, I don't know what year we're in at the city. We had a 125th birthday a while ago, but saying, okay, do you want to put a pot of money aside every year and put X percent into that? For example, if God's willing, the creek doesn't rise, we'll have a community center. And if that gets off the ground, which would be several years in the making, would you want to allocate some money for the gala event that would be coming in? So these are just thoughts that are rolling around if we want to
Rather
kind
than
of
have them put in that year for it and be behind the eight ball a little
for
bit.
everybody else, yeah, or whatever would be a
Yeah.
celebration
Sure.
coming up. I mean,
Sure.
we've got, the tall ship is coming back. I mean, it's amazing things that are coming up. We know Fast Ferry's happening here. I think next year out of Southworth. There's talk about the ferry visiting, coming here, in the Triangle. There's all sorts of stuff that's being talked about. So the question is, do you kind of take some money and start building a pot for that? Lastly, and I've been kicking this one around because it's something that's been frustrating for me, and then I really am going to kind of shut up a little bit, is one of the things that we've all talked about, and I'm going to look at Jack for this one, is how do we measure heads and beds? And we talked about you're not going to get people's receipts. Do you want to sit there and go? You're not going to go through the parking lot and get the copy license plates. Not only would that be weird, but chances of police call, talking to you would probably be pretty high. And I was thinking, and this is what I was going to ask Jack, is there anything that prevents us from saying, hey, a typical Saturday and Sunday, I'm talking about a weekend event, Saturday and Sunday, your rate, your fill rate, what's the term you use? Occupancy rate, is 90%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when we have the Mustang, on the bay, what do you get? Oh, we're at 100% that day.
Mm-hmm.
That's a way by being able to judge an event and say, hey, does this put heads in beds?
So that your groups can quantify it a little
So their
bit.
groups could quantify it.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of some ways. So because
That's a criteria for them.
It is a criteria, and
Yeah.
yet we don't have any. We don't get any information. So I was just trying to think: is that one way of doing that?
It's hard for the hotels because I'm going to say from May to September, we're going to be full every weekend, no matter what.
Okay.
No matter what, there's an event going on, not an event, it's just the nature.
Okay.
We're going to be full.
Because people travel at that time? Is
Yeah,
that
it's
the
just-
basic?
it's just-
I didn't know. I'm reaching. I just
Yeah, so and do all those events help because they help build a base to start with.
Mhm.
And then at a certain point, we get to a certain point of occupancy, we raise the rate. And then we get to another certain point, and as the rooms fill, the rates go up. So it's not always hard to tell. I always like to tell my people, hey, when people are checking in, we're a small hotel. Find out what they're here for. Find out what they're coming in for. Anything, you can say, oh, that's so great you're here for that, and welcome to our town.
Right.
So an informal survey.
Yeah, it's going to be, that's hit and miss. You're not going to get 100% results. But we always ask the event organizers, we know it's hard for them to do it pre-event, but post-event, maybe they could send something out. Hey, and it doesn't have to be all about lodging. Hey, how did you like our event? Would you come back next year? Did you stay in a hotel this year?
That might be a very good way to do it instead.
And like I said, the survey could be directed not just, like I said, just that's what it seems like it's lodging only, but that way you get feedback on their event. Is there anything we'd like us to do better? What could we do?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And as they're filling it out, they just feel, hey, lodging, oh yeah. 'Cause I believe that the Science and Engineering Fair does a pretty good job of trying to find that.
I'm sorry?
The Science and Engineering Fair
Okay.
in Bremerton does a good job of trying to find out those numbers. So they actually have real hard data on how many, which hotels you stay at, because they have listed a bunch of hotels on their website, but from Silverdale, probably down to Port Orchard, and they try to find out.
So how would you collect that? Say I'm an event coordinator and I'm doing the Seagull Calling Festival or the Wing Cook-Off or any part of that. Have paper, have somebody go around and collect it because they're not really registering for
Yeah,
anything?
your Seagull's a different event, and like,
Yeah.
it has registrants and participants,
Right.
and it doesn't necessarily even reflect the people who maybe come down to see the event. That's just the registrant.
Because I can see if somebody's registering for
Yeah,
something,
right.
how it'd be easier to get it, but just when you invite the general public down,
That's hard to.
that's super hard to say who stayed in
Right.
a hotel, who brought Uncle Joe, you know,
Yeah.
who did what.
Unless you're doing some sort of raffle, which some do,
Yeah.
some don't, but not everybody wants to do a raffle because they don't want their information, you know what I mean?
It's like the cruise.
Yeah.
How in the heck would you gather, unless, from the
Well,
car, the people in the cars you can, but not
Yeah.
the people that come to see the
No.
show?
Well, I think for the cruise, the people that come to see the show aren't usually the ones that are going to be staying in the hotels. The people that actually come for the show that bring their cars, they're the ones staying in the hotel.
Right.
You think so?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
touring participants.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the closest thing we can do to that is go around, look at the hotel, see where the car trailers are parked. You know,
And I'd say for an event like that too, even if he does get someone who decides, hey, I'm gonna drive up from Oregon to, it's probably a pretty minimal number. It's not gonna be.
Oh, yeah.
It's not gonna be a real
Right.
number, it's
Not
gonna make you jump
majority.
out of your socks.
Probably
No, I
like
know.
10 maybe.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But like you say, the hotels are filled anyway, so it's like, okay. But, you know, that's part of the criteria, and Noah was saying that this keeps getting harder and harder, because they keep putting on, you know, more information, and quite frankly, I would not want to be on an audit spot of somebody saying, how do you know? Because exactly what you're saying. Okay.
So what was the name? I didn't have a pen before. The Science and Engine.
We got Washington State, it's WSSEF, Washington State Science and Engineering Fair.
Now that they all registered, right?
They're all registered.
So that's how they can have their
Mhm.
list of people that attended.
Mhm.
You know,
Okay.
but they do for the, you know, Mustangs and stuff like that, but you know, you make a valid point for seagull calling contest.
Right.
Because they're putting in for money, you know, Fathom's 4th of July,
Yeah, Paul's, POPSA,
POBSA,
you know,
all
how,
of
you
them.
know, I mean, they do some really nice things
Sure they do.
for events, but, you know, do they put heads in beds? Who knows? You know?
And it's gonna be the hotel down here is gonna be your best bet, whether or not they actually wanna have someone get off their tush and make those kind of, you know, inquiries when someone's
Right.
checking in or checking out for that matter. And I did, even when I was
Okay.
doing it at the Baymont, you know, we just do it, being a big hotel, we still do our best. So
Right.
I did, in my mind, we just go, oh my gosh, yeah. And we had, you know, a good 15 rooms for so-so's event.
Right, okay.
And usually, with the Science Engineering Fair also does group blocks. So those events that we'll call the hotels ahead of time, going, hey, can you put aside, you know, 10, 15 rooms
Sure.
for me at a little bit discounted rate? Well, if they're not block fills, I can tell you, oh my gosh, they did a good job of bringing people in.
Okay.
But a lot of organizers, probably like for you, you guys probably don't call them and say, hey, we want to
Yeah.
block rooms. Some hotels make you guarantee those rooms.
Right,
But other people like me are like, no, we'll take what we get, but we'll cut that off almost about 6 weeks prior to the event and go, okay, now anyone else wants to come in, now they're paying full price.
right,
Sure.
To make sure we don't lose those rooms. We're not going to
Sure.
hold them.
yeah.
But other urban hotels will say, no, you have to guarantee those. And if we don't get those 15 rooms, then and we only get 12, you get to pay for those.
Yeah, and us as a club, I mean, we're not going to do
Yeah,
that.
it's,
Yeah. You're just hoping for a discount.
That's a dinosaur move, and I don't
Yeah.
ever do that.
So those were my things that, you know, that we had talked about and, you know, we thought about since we last met. So I guess to go back, is any interest in a strategic plan, and what do you guys think would go into it?
I think you're putting a lot of work into it by building a strategic plan for a lodging tax committee. But
I don't think it has to be a War and Peace.
but that being said, did we do a criteria and a criteria sheet this time?
No,
No.
we used to years ago
Okay.
in 2008
So Mike,
and 9 and 10ish. We had criteria sheets.
if you want to get with the county and talk to Lee Ray's over there and ask if she can get a copy of what she hands out.
Okay.
And they have a criteria sheet, it's an unappointed system and,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, we used to do it, but each year, as the committee came in, they would elect not to do them, or they would, or whatever.
I
So
think
they've
we
always
should-
left it up to the committee, but
Yeah.
to me, I think it would be a great idea
Mm-hmm.
to put it as some sort of policy, because
Yep.
I know that our tourism
Okay.
strategic plan
Mhm.
puts it in there as a suggestion that there should be some sort of criteria rating system. So, you know, you could adopt a formal policy by resolution and
And where that also helps is when there's any kind of mediation or maybe some back and forth, you say, okay, everyone, let's see what you filled your sheets out. Oh,
Yep.
then it becomes a little more clear.
No, I'm all in favor of it. So let's see if we.
I think a
can get
lot
that
of the
one.
perception was that was also the start of public disclosure going through the roof, and people didn't want to put comments
Yeah.
down because it's a public record type of thing. But
We don't have to put names on it, then
No,
it's just
absolutely.
like committee.
yeah,
Okay, so we want to go with put together criteria, which I think is doable.
And the city, the counties is a really good one just to leverage off of, because everybody got it in place, and everybody got the questions for you, and then, it basically says, hey, does this event qualify? Does this event bring heads and beds?
It's kind of like this one here.
Yeah.
that
yeah.
you
And
just
this
gave
one
us
is
from
the
Bainbridge.
shoulder
This is,
season.
this is,
yeah.
Yeah, page
This is-
4.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, Bainbridge. And I did not look at I didn't look at the counties. For some reason I didn't even think of the county as having lodging tax, but they, they're.
There's a large.
So
No,
I'll get a
money
hold
out of
of
that
Lee.
one.
Now that one, yeah. So,
I think we-
okay, so we can move with that.
Yeah, I think we allocated about 400,000 out of that one.
Yeah. As part of the strategic plan, what do you want to talk about as far as the reserves? Again, looking at Bainbridge and talking about it, they almost keep a 1-year reserve. In other words, they're only spending money that they brought in from the previous year. We're almost at that point, on that. I know we had some strong feelings, previously, which is fine. Just trying to get a sense, and if we wanted to hold some funds for a new event, and then look at mid-year for distributing those. And also the third part I would bring in would be about, do we want to put a pot so much per year away for a major event that would come down the road, whatever that would be.
Would that be a city event, or anybody would qualify for that, or would you define that?
I don't know.
No,
What do
I
you
think-
How do you think?
The criteria for application for lodging tax is cut and dry. I mean, you can't put it in 3 months later
Right.
Right.
and see what happens.
No.
If you're gonna put
and-
some, oh, go ahead.
Even though we're still setting aside funds for, whatever, reserve, a major project, first timers, you're setting that funds aside, but the applicants still have to apply. You can't say,
Yeah.
we're gonna give it to this person. They still have to go through a process.
No, but I mean, if.
But it's available.
But, the 150th
Yeah.
anniversary is coming down the road. There may be, bigger celebrations. People might want to do more stuff, whatever stuff is. I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
We're bringing in the Queen Mary or something like that, So, so the three things is we talked, just throwing it out, reserve, a yearly set aside for new event, and a pot for I don't know, I'll call it down the road or, major event. Do we want to do any of that?
Is this committee allowed to set that policy, or are we just making a recommendation?
We're making a recommendation to the council.
Well, the set aside for a major event, I think that should be a city, so like you're saying the 150th anniversary or whatever, something like that, because otherwise it's just another event. Let them go through the normal process. I would think, yeah, it's not a bad idea to set something aside for the city to put something on that's, a major celebration, but if it's just, I don't know how else to qualify it. Otherwise, to me, it just seems like it's just another event.
You should know a year in
From-
advance and put in for it and go through the
Yeah, it's
process like
something,
everybody else.
it's a major thing. Otherwise, it's just somebody else looking for the money.
Right, but but I think the question is, would we want to have set aside funds? People would have to apply.
Mhm.
You're absolutely right. But that we know that a big event may be coming.
And it would be a
We want-
brand new event, not a.
Yes, no,
Yeah, so-
like every 3 years, the high school band does a major trip. And they do it so one class always, during your time in the band, you've always made a major event. They went to Washington DC this morning. And the point, so if you look at something, and I'm just pulling stuff out of the air, let's just say that, well, actually, not that this would happen here, but, they have the Indian tribe with the canoes. They move that from tribe to tribe every year, and it's a pretty big deal. It's like 50,000 people show up. I don't
Yeah,
know
Port
how they
Columbia had
put
it,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It is big, yeah.
And stuff. So
Sure.
you know, if something like that happened, you know, would you want to have some money set aside for that? Yes, they'd have to apply. Yes, you would know years in advance, but would you want to have money that could go to that without
Taking away from
other
others.
folks? And that's the question. Do you want to build a pot up for that?
So that
And-
you're not taking away from your existing things
Right.
that are regular,
Right.
normal events.
Yeah, that,
Gotcha.
this is just a thought, you know. I want to just kind of throw that out there as we're trying to put this plan together. And by the way, Jack, I don't think this is going to be a very long strategic plan. I think it's kind of an overview, but we're, you know, having a criteria, we're already starting to put it together. So think about that for big event. Would we want to do a new event, one where somebody says, hey, they didn't apply in January, or I mean in fall for the following year, and they want to put an event on, and they would want to, you know, we want to apply, and then we would have that money. You know,
So
we
in a
could
way,
set
it takes a little bit away every year, but it builds a big pot, so it's not
Well,
so
that's for the big event.
big, yeah.
Yeah, whatever, you know, kind of a one-time event. What I was talking about here would be, as a separate pot, would be, let's say we have that 100,000, and you say 5%, $5,000 is being held for the first 6 months to see if there's an additional event that they could apply for. Now, if we want to say, hey, you apply in August, September, and we're doing it for the following year, everybody should know what their events are, because they just don't fall out of the sky, because there's always planning that has to happen. Then I would say, hey, just distribute the money at the beginning of the year.
I say, if you have it, then spend it.
Okay? All right. So, okay.
Is that for all of them, all of the pots that we're thinking about, or just for the first time thing?
I've always think for all the pots. I mean, once you have it.
So you're saying
once
not
it's in
keep
there-
a year?
Yeah, once it's in there, that's, Bremerton has never kept anything, and neither does the county.
The county's has a very strong position. When I spoke to Lee
Yes.
last year, that
So-
every penny is used. They do not
Right.
hold anything back.
And you just come back for next year's allocation,
For next
and
year's,
you
yeah.
go off that.
And she said that if they out of money, then they're out of money. They don't allocate it.
So, okay, so that brings up the question.
But I don't know if there's a policy that states that, or if that's just that person's authority to do that. I don't know.
Well, the word.
There was no policy,
Sorry.
because we had debated
Okay.
it this year. But-
Okay.
but they-
So they're similar to us.
But they made it clear that that's the stance they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
So the worst case
Yeah.
scenario in my book, I mean, truly the worst case scenario is we're always, right now, I mean, forget the reserve for a second. We are budgeting, we're betting that the money's going to be there. And let's say the Comfort Inn burned down in June. You're not going to have any money from the Comfort Inn, and let's just say there's the same amount of beds. I don't know where the money comes from right now, percentage-wise. So you would lose a quarter of your money.
Probably half.
Well, you'd lose half for that,
For that particular year.
6 months,
Yeah, right.
which would be a quarter of the year's money. So where's that money coming from that we've allocated? It's not. So, basically, that would be one of the reasons to have a reserve. I'm just throwing that out.
And in that scenario,
In that scenario,
what would happen if that
What would
happened in
happen?
June? So it happened in June.
2 months collection.
Historically, 70% of the recipients don't even ask for their reimbursement until December. So we'll be okay. But if my goal has always tried to get them to do it shortly
Well,
after.
Yeah, but they don't ask for the reimbursement, but you don't have that money
Right.
in December anyway.
So if
And
they
these-
spent it and didn't
They
ask
have
for
it.
it, they're kind of out of luck,
So
and then
that's where I
they're
was going.
hurting.
So what
Yeah.
could happen is if somebody, say 50% of the people ask for their reimbursements in February, March, May, June, it burnt down. The people that were allocated $50,000, whatever, I know it's not that
Yeah,
much,
I know.
was allocated 10,000 and their event isn't until November, they're not going to get any, where these people have already
Yeah.
Already had
most of
their
money.
event.
Right, so that's a scenario to look at too, that
Yeah, I'm just
Because you
throwing
can't
this out.
split it up
as
at that
a-
point. At that point, it's a first come, first serve kind
Yeah.
of whoever
And it
got their
states-
receipts in.
Yeah, and it states in their contract. It does state in our contract that it's for, whatever. and
Whoever
then-
gets in first.
Yeah. So I'm just throwing that out,
Yeah.
and that's why I can see why, when I looked at Bainbridge Island and I saw they had a year's reserve, I was going, okay, now I get it.
Right.
Because they're looking at the worst case scenario, not the best case
And
scenario.
they're limited with the number of hotels too over there,
Mhm.
like you are.
Right,
They have a lot of
yeah.
B&Bs
Yeah.
pitching,
Yeah.
but they only have a couple, 2 or 3 hotels. So
Yeah.
to make up the bulk of that. So.
Right.
So basically, you could either, if it's already in the contract that if the monies aren't there, you're not going to get allocated, then you're protected there in a way. But the reserve is kind of a cushion to say, hey, it wasn't your fault it burned down, so we're still going to, with the reserves,
Right.
would you have to have something in writing to kick the reserves in? Or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or is it still it burned down, you're out of luck because
Yeah.
this is all we had and we're
That's all
not
we
dipping
have.
into the reserves?
Yep.
You would have to kind of have that spelled out too.
Yeah.
Well,
Right now, there isn't a policy, so we would give them everything they had up to the penny.
Right, but again, somebody's going to be short. I mean, except for the fact that we do have a reserve. We know that. It's just we don't
Right.
have a policy for what do we want to do
Right,
with
but
the
if we
reserve.
didn't, then yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
yeah. So what I heard, it was nobody was interested in holding money back for a new event because in reality, everybody's figured out what's going on in next year. That
Right.
even if somebody's putting on a new event, they know about it
And they
in
can apply.
advance.
They apply. And generally, new
They
events
apply.
are going to be scrutinized tougher anyway because they're new. There's
Yeah.
there's no history. There's no data to be
Right.
collected on.
That's what I heard. Okay. Did I sense that there was a little bit of thought about holding up money? I'm just saying, think about it. We're not making an approval recommendation, but if I start writing something and bringing it back, do we want to talk about holding some funds outside for a big event that could come down the road? I'd title it something else.
Or a special project.
Special-
Like a 5% thing, you're
Yeah,
thinking,
or
something
just
like that?
even 1%. Build
1%.
Or a
that
certain
builds
dollar
up.
amount, yeah.
That it would just grow every year into its own
It grow,
fund.
That's actually not a bad idea.
And you can even
because-
set up, as part of the policy, the criteria that would allow to use.
What would
those.
qualify
Right,
for
right.
that?
It's
Right.
going to be a really big
You'd
lodging
have to-
event. Brings a lot.
No, we allocate a lot of funds, but 25,000 buys a lot. And I'm not saying taking that out now, but I'm saying if we grew that and something was happening here, a major event, I can't even think of what a major event would be. For me, it'd be something looking out at right past you. I think of tall ships coming, or something that happens once in a decade. Where
That costs a lot of
visiting-
money to bring them.
Right, but I'm just saying
Yeah,
is,
so,
is
yeah.
that something how we would want to, use that for additional publicity or whatever the case may
And
be?
in theory, that would just be a portion of their budget that they fell short of.
Right.
Where they've already planned most of
Right.
the budget. I
Yeah.
would assume that the.
Yeah, we're not
concept of it-
funding the whole thing,
Right,
that's for sure.
absolutely, yeah.
But augment. So I'll play with it if that's okay. And then we kind of talked about it. Do you want me to play with, when I say this, that means I'll be talking with Brandy about a section for a reserve. In other words, so that we have a reason for the reserve. How do we, allocate it? Do we want to limit it to, a recommendation would be 1 year. So for example, let's just say 1 year is $100,000. And we look at the trend for this year and we know 123 is coming in. Then we're going to say anything besides, an average year, of 100,000, if that's what it's been, then the committee could allocate that at mid-year or whatever the case can be. Would that be okay to try to set as put together on paper?
I think so. I think you bring up a good point about worst case scenarios, and if it's told in that way, I think it makes more sense. Do you know what I mean? I get the spend every penny thing, but the reality is you could really mess up another organization if you didn't have something to fall back on.
Yeah.
I mean, these are little, they don't have lots of money, POPSA and, you know, some of these groups. Yeah, you guys.
So what about,
Exactly.
what if you look at it
Exactly.
from a different perspective in not that, that the organization is gonna hurt, but what if we're at the start of an economic downturn, right? And so we have a reserve, we always have a year in advance in there. That reserve for that year, is it going to give the city time to adjust and increase the tourism aspect of it? Because otherwise, when it crashes, it's done. And so we don't have any money, we don't have a reserve, and so there isn't any set aside to help us get back that tourism aspect or to get people here, because that's what it's for, right? And so, and when there is nothing, it takes a few years to get back up. And so hopefully with that set aside, you know, looking at it from a different perspective, that set aside will help us not come all the way to the bottom and help us rebuild, where we would only hit a low for a year or two because we got that reserve and people are out there using it and marketing like they're it's intended to.
Yeah.
So that's a different perspective to.
So that'd be
to look
part
at.
of saying you'd have to identify what it could be used for. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of spell it out. Yeah.
I don't have a preference one way or the other.
Okay.
To be honest, it's-
Well, no, let's.
I'm fairly neutral now. I mean, there's
Pros and cons for each.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying is if we put something down on paper, then that allows us at least to say, hey, this is where we're coming from and why. I personally like the idea that if we hold a reserve for worst case scenario, with economic downturn or something happens, then we also can go back and I hate to use the word sell, but say, hey, we're over our reserve. Let's augment a little bit, you know, in these areas. That's what I would do.
Where you set the reserve amount at the historical,
Exactly.
you know,
5-year average,
at
whatever.
90,000,
I'm
whatever.
good with that. It makes
And
sense.
then
to
in the
me.
policy
Well,
would
money's
state,
right there.
once it hits
Yeah.
over. it
So
goes
you're not like
over.
you're building it and
Yeah.
taking away from you. It's already there. I agree,
Yeah.
Jack. I agree. It's kind of a neutral.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So if we looked at it from that side, the things that we talked about the money in the strategic plan, we're going to try to set a criteria. I'll try to see what we can come up with survey. You know, what could we do or how could we get it? Because I mean, just something that we could possibly figure out how to get something concrete instead of. We had a lot of people there. Okay. You know?
I think we had a template that they could use, because I
That'd
know,
be a good idea.
was it you that provided, somebody provided us the voting, the votes of the chimes and lights.
We do zip
Not chimes and lights.
zip codes.
The zip codes of
We
the
do-
judging for the decorated
For the
votes.
decorated boats. So we,
Yeah, it was
but
fun.
there's somebody sitting at a table, and every time anybody walks by, we give them a pencil and a paper, and it has their zip code on their voting ballot. So, yeah, so we get zip
So that would be a thing that we
So
could put in a
so they
criteria.
could
Yeah.
justify how many people
Okay.
were there.
And they're not feeling like their information is going to be shared because it's not asking for an email, it's not asking for a phone number, it's not
It's
asking
just
for
a
an
zip code,
address.
and you know
So that
where
could
people
be-
are coming
The
from.
only thing you don't know is you don't know just visiting for the day or if they stayed the night.
Right.
You don't, but with the zip codes, you can see if they're all 98366 Port Orchard. You know they're probably not.
If they're coming from Oregon,
98312.
chances are.
Yeah, so you can kind of pull who's.
At
I'm
least.
just letting you know, because
Yeah.
the Turner Joy does this.
Okay.
What?
They have a billboard where they say, hey, come wherever you're
Oh.
from, put your pin on there.
Okay.
And they'll come to lodging tax and they'll say, God, we had all these people come from outside the area. I'm like, where they stay the night? Oh, Seattle. Because they're out the South King,
Yeah.
the concierges are sending them over. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, but that doesn't, you can't use those, you know?
But at least, you know, one of the things is about outside of 50 miles.
Mhm.
So they're making an assumption that if you come
Yeah.
to some part, then you're staying. But as you pointed out, if all the heads are in beds May through September, you know, which is when most of our events are, you know, we
Yeah.
proved that, you know.
Okay.
We're full. So I mean, that at least it gives you one way of doing it. So we'll come back with something
And
that
going
talks
back, when I
about
said
that.
people from Seattle, they were staying the night.
Yeah.
Seattle, yeah.
They were
No,
literally.
no, no, I hear what
No,
you're
no,
saying.
yeah, they're taking
But
the ferry
the
over.
ferry's the number one tourism thing, so they're riding the
Oh,
ferry, and then, oh, while
God,
you're there,
yes.
let's go to the Turner
Turner
Joy.
Joy, yeah.
You know?
And we spend a couple hours in
no
town.
disrespect, they do a great job of marketing over there and getting those people, those day trippers over.
Right.
They do a fantastic job.
Yeah. Well, and they keep talking about, what are we doing to get those day trippers to visit here, to go visit the bars and food places
Yeah,
and
we
stuff.
talked about the ferry,
Yeah.
or not the ferry, the cruise ship.
Cruise ship stuff, so, and that's coming this
5
year.
nights,
Yeah.
5 days, yeah.
Yeah.
I have the dates if anybody
Yeah.
wants them.
Yeah.
Actually, I need to meet with the city and
Good.
POPSA and Chamber and everybody to fill you in on what's going on, so.
Pops is next week.
Yeah, I was gonna be out of town, but I'm gonna be in
Yeah.
town now, so I'm gonna go.
Anything else for the good of the order? Because we can do some of this electronically.
Yeah.
And then, summer's always a tough time to meet quarterly unless we have some money. I'll ask Noah, see where we are.
So you get a
And so,
stipend?
what?
We get a stipend now?
I know.
Pizza next time.
Unfortunately, it said you guys don't get compensated.
But no.
Jay did bring some.
I did. If not going down to the kitchen. Well, yesterday was National Unicorn Day, if you didn't know.
Oh.
I wish I would.
I didn't know, somebody.
My granddaughter.
But anyway, so we'll follow up a little bit, and if not, then we'll start meeting in early, like August just to get a little bit ahead of start. But if I find out there's some additional funds, like past, I will be back to the group, even if it's a small amount that we can try to break loose. Okay.
In August, I can give you a pretty good idea. I can tell you right now that from last time we met, we're just way above. Way above last year.
So we'll meet. So unless you guys give me direction now, we'll start opening up the application process for 2020
Yeah.
funds. So we already know we have 100,000.
Yep.
And so we already know the amount. That's typically what holds us back until September, October. So at this point, anytime you guys want me to open up that process for allocations, we can, unless you want to wait from the finance director to see what
Yeah.
that number is, or we develop a policy before we open it up.
I'd like
What
that.
I'd like to do is do the policy,
Okay.
circulate it electronically. At the same time, I'll wait another couple months, talk to Noah, see where we are on current
Okay.
funding coming in, see if we can break loose any dollars, because we're doing over, and then that would cause us to meet again. And if not, then I would say that we open the process up in August timeframe.
September, yeah. I'll have to look and see
so
when,
we
yeah.
can meet and then do the allocations. But by that time, we would have a criteria. So and people would know what it is, and that would be good for us. And then we can try to see where we can find out about it. Heads, I'll say outside visitors, because heads and beds, as you pointed out, is not going to be not the issue, but something that would allow people to say, hey, we need more information than just 98366.
And help them figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what I took away from
Right.
before was
Okay.
people were like,
Yeah.
help me figure out how to
Yeah.
do this. you
And I
know?
do like the aspect of, I'm hoping that maybe in that policy process that that they mention all the hotels and the bed and breakfast on their either their marketing or their
Websites.
website,
Yeah,
and that should be part of the criteria, whether you're
I like
judging
that.
or it's in the policy
I
itself.
like that idea.
Well,
So-
and I think you're a big advocate for the Kitsap. I'm sorry.
Visit Kitsap?
Visit Kitsap group, and I get that, because we're a small part, but they do a large position. And was it last night, Kita, the economic development folks,
Yeah.
they were here and they were showing the number of people that are looking at the area for establishing businesses and stuff. Doesn't mean they're here, but I think if I remember the number right, because we were talking about it, right now the city has applications. And when I say application, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, for 1,800 units in between single family and apartment units. That's a lot. When you start looking at
That's not
is the
counting
city
the Corner
growing?
Woods area
Yeah.
and one other little area.
Right.
Well, that's inside city limits.
That's,
Yes,
that's just city
absolutely.
limits. No, that's
Yeah.
just city, not
outside the
county.
corridor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and stuff. And so we are growing, and we're going to continue to grow. So you're right. It's important that we spend our money wisely, and attract people as we come. So it's a good thing.
I can say from the hotelier side, sometimes your new residents or people who come here to visit, and they just fall in love, and not just with your Navy. That happens all the time. The Navy people come here like, this is
Yeah.
beautiful. But we'll get
all
someone
good,
who came
yeah.
for a softball
Yeah.
tournament. Goes, this place is great. I'm gonna look for my retirement home or this and that. It happens all the time. It's
Yep.
the beauty here and then just the weather, the good temperament here.
Yep.
And Visit Kitsap does provide on a monthly, because they submit their reimbursements monthly. And when they submit their reimbursements, they attach their P&L. And then they've already determined the allocation of what they spend marketing specifically for the city of Port Orchard. So they have that snapshot. But they also provide a list of every single person that has done inquiries for that
Wow.
quarter, that month.
That's nice.
Yeah, so they do a really good job, and there's constantly people looking for things to do and, you know, where to come to visit or to stay or to live. And
So then does the city take that information and follow up and do anything with that?
they disperse it to like the chambers and all of that
It should
stuff.
go
So
to the chamber.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be good,
Because
yeah.
Visit Kitsap's job is,
Yeah.
is to get the people, well, interested in coming here, or get them here.
Sure.
And once they're here, it's the job of the chambers and the downtown associations to say, hey, say they land a group that comes in and stay for a weekend. And now it's the other organization's job to tap into that. And, hey, do we give out bags at the hotels for them to go say, hey, here's all the local merchants, here's the great restaurants. So Visit Kitsap's job is to bring them here and get them to stay the night. Now, it's everyone else's to.
It's kind of how-
Great activities,
Here's an eat,
right.
dine, and shop and play.
That's
Right.
kind of what we're doing. We have the cruise ship coming, right? And now we're saying anybody that wants to put your information, give them a bag,
Yeah.
get them into,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind
Like
of
we
the
just
same.
talked about the last meeting about subsidizing their ferry ride.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be
from
great.
over here.
Yep. Okay. Anything else for the
Quick,
good?
next month.
Yep. I know.
So I think Jay and I will to get
Yes,
together. I think the end goal is that we'll be drafting some sort of policy for you guys to look at. Just as a reminder, when we send that out via email, don't reply all, just reply individually to me, and then I will summarize everybody. Basically, I just cut and paste and put it on one list and send it all to you guys, so you guys know. So
I'd see that happening in about couple, no longer.
a
than
couple months,
you
4 to
know,
6
so,
weeks-ish
yeah.
is when we can hopefully get a
Yeah.
good, solid one that you guys can start really digging into. So.
Good. This
Thank
was
you for
helpful.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I keep seeing you.